Pickaxe.
Welcome, cast and crew, to the very first episode of our brand new off-week mini-series, Fables of Fendraeya. Fables of Fendraeya will tell the tales of past historical Fendraeyan events, be it a major political turning point, a budding tense conflict, or a world-shattering cataclysmic event, all told through the eyes of a new director. Fables of Fendraeya will feature new faces to cast party, new characters to love and invest yourselves in, and a brand new, gripping story. Our first series is Fables of Fendraeya, Arcanum. Join this group of adventurers as they explore the early days of the Magistrate firsthand, when they were known to the world as the Arcanum. Fables of Fendraeya episodes will release every other week on Mondays in between Cast Party main campaign episodes. If you'd like more content from our new group, you can see us in action over at patreon.com/castparty. All Cast Party patrons have access to our prequel test one-shot that sets up our story, which is available right now. But don't worry, you don't need to listen to the episode to understand where the story picks up here. This is just some extra exclusive bonus content for those who would like to support the show, now and in the future. Patreon.com/castparty. Now, I'll hand it over to Fables of Fendraeya's newest director, Jose, to start up this incredible new journey.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Fables of Fendraeya, Arcanum. My name is Jose Polino, or at DM Jose P, and I will be your director for today. I am joined by my lovely fellow adventurers, so let's go ahead and introduce them. Ryan.
Hi, Ryan McManus. I will be playing Rowan Fairisle, Half-Light of Selune, seeking to bring a sense of calm and comfort to those lost in the dark. You can find me on my personals at rye.mcmanus or running the Cast Party socials at CastPartyD&D.
Awesome. Andy.
Hello, you beautiful nerds. My name is Andy, and I'll be playing Five, one of the seven, Sojourner commissioned for exploration by The Forged. And you can find me at Mr. Dandy DM on TikTok and on all the other socials.
Right. Annie.
Hi, I'm Annie. I'll be playing Rid, Gaslight, Gatekeep, Ghoul Boss. You can find me at Cantrip on TikTok, CANNE.
Awesome. And finally, we have Sin.
Salutations, my name is Sin. I go by they, them pronouns, and I will be playing Zue, collector of chronicles, aspiring to herald the histories of Fendraeya. And you can find me on most socials as sensationally.me, CIN instead of SEN.
So without further ado, we bring you this story 100 years ago, before the events of Cast Party. In a world being discovered every day, life bursting to understand its purpose, and possibility presenting itself around every rolling hill of this vast and wonderful world, known as Fendraeya. Our adventures begin by following the footsteps of 4 individuals who wandered into the Veil of the Mist, and through a connection by Zue, were chosen, more like hired, by Illionas Thirrel, an eccentrically excited Archmage working with the Arcanum. The group was hired to find and apprehend a seemingly very powerful and dangerous individual by the name of Kaimosora Navinay, a member of an old race of Tieflings known as the Arborean Concord that arrived not too long ago on these lands. Kaimosora, along with his Concord, are apparently the reason for why their home plane of existence, Arborea, is fading and dying. The Arcanum wishes to apprehend this individual and prevent a mass tragedy from possibly occurring in Fendraeya. Members of the inner circle within the Arcanum find the destruction of Arborea to be of such delicate matter that they instructed Illionas to gather a group and, under the radar, capture Kaimosora. By way of overland travel, transportation provided by Illionas himself, the group journeyed to the Badlands, specifically the city of Los Diablos, the eastern desert landscape within Fendraeya. where the Tieflings during this time settle and call this unbearable heat home. Here the party is met with warm welcomes by the citizens, and upon arriving, they were met with resistance by some Tieflings of higher social and political stature. These Tieflings are the children of Kaimosora himself, who make themselves known to the party. Kaimosora presents himself through some much hesitant back and forth, and after a beat within this conversation that was seemingly going nowhere in the party's favor, Kaimosora looks to Zue and agrees to go with them. Kaimosora's children begin to panic as Kaimosora assures them that he will see them again. And that is where we pick up our adventure. As you guys are standing there in this circle at the center of the square within Los Diablos, this elderly tiefling with red skin, brown beard that comes to a very fine point, met with slight knots on the sides, dripping down from the cheek. These emerald green and brown robes, barefoot, covered entirely throughout his skin in arcane sigils. These two gorgeous and beautiful ancient horns that come down and swirl down to the shoulders with all kinds of earrings and bracelets and knickknacks attached to it. This is Kaimosora as he looks to you, Zue, and he says, "Enough games. Let's go." And as he says that, you watch as his body lifts no more than maybe a couple inches off the ground, and he begins to kind of hover in place. He gives you a slight chuckle. "What? An old man cannot be walking through the sands like he used to." And you see, as he puts his hands behind his back, there is a age to him. You see this very old, perhaps ancient tiefling before you. And as he puts his hands behind his back, he looks to his children, and Saru, the most sort of muscular looking one with a war belt at the center, gorgeous horns and similar, not as predominant, but a couple of those arcane sigils also on his bare skin, looks to him. "Father, please, stay." He looks to you, Zue. "Lead the way." Sin, as this very ancient looking tiefling looks to you with these very soft eyes, what does he see?
When Kaimosora looks over at Zue, he sees a young human woman who looks to be in her early to mid-20s, stands at about 5'8". She has a gangly kind of lanky build to her, with sienna-toned skin, and her skin has been lightly kissed by soft brown freckles. She has very piercing blue eyes that sit behind circular metal wire frames, and she has a short pink pixie cut that cuts off at about her chin length with a soft wave to it. The pink in her hair is almost like a soft, light cotton candy colored pink. She wears a cream colored top that has been tucked into darker brown linen pants that are styled almost like slacks. She has low top leather shoes, and over her shoulders she has a tan colored trench coat like overcoat draped over her shoulders, and she has a couple leather belts wrapped around her waist to holster a book, and she has perfectly painted blue nails.
You all watch as all the other tieflings around you that are centered around the square are almost in awe. There are some that you notice are looking to Kaimosora in almost like a very, like it's the last time they're ever going to see this individual, right? Almost like not necessarily shedding a tear, but like a longing look to him. But there are others that are not as welcoming as they almost begin to disperse from within the circle outward. You all watch as Zue begins to make her way forward. And Kaimosora just gently glides, seemingly almost waiting for all of you to make the next move.
What is the general demeanor of the populace as Kaimosora is making this decision?
Make a perception check for me.
That is an 11.
You look around, and of course, the younger looking tieflings, they don't really seem to pay too much mind. There are a couple of older looking tieflings that seem to sort of be transfixed by what is just happening. You gather that there is a general kind of dismissive, but also appreciative look to them. It's very strange because even as some of them leave the square, some of them leave in anger, and others seem to leave in like it's too much for them to bear. He looks to you, Zue, And he goes,
So, this is, probably not what you expected, my child, if I may be so bold.
Not necessarily. And again, unexpected choices do make for the best stories, I say as I flash him a smile with my hand on my book, showing him the Arcanum symbol that sits on the outside of my cover.
as soon as you reveal the Arcanum symbol of this eye with sun rays coming out, you watch as Kaimosora, he looks to you, and his brows sort of narrow.
So, it is the Arcanum, then, that wishes to hunt down an old man. I can say I'm not surprised, but someone as seemingly talented and unique as yourself, tangled up with the Arcanum. What a waste.
And he begins to glide now past you. Whereas before he was waiting for you, now he glides past you through the streets. And remember, the streets here in Los Diablos, it is a sand-covered city. But there are these man-made sort of like wooden slats that have been placed down into the ground, almost like sunk into the sand. So that it releases that fatigue of constantly walking on sand. Rowan, as Saro, the main, most strongest tiefling, is looking to you, what does he see?
Sorrow peers down from the hut and sees a human standing about 6 feet tall, weighing roughly 200 pounds. He is in his mid to late 30s with a full black beard which covers most of his face with hints of gray speckled throughout, sharp facial features that are accompanied with prominent cheekbones, long black hair that's pulled back into a wild, unkempt half knot with strands falling and outlining his face, dripping sweat from the heat. He has a muscular build, but it's hard to tell under the big, dark black, bulky chainmail that covers his body, and a long, white hooded cloak with almost like a pale blue glow wraps around his neck in tufts like a scarf, covering the majority of his neck, his upper chest, and his broad shoulder pads. Underneath the cape on his back sits a black ornate shield with a pair of eyes along with 7 stars that rest and glow on the shield's face. A similar white and pale blue sash lays around his waist, which falls between his legs. His eyes are a light pale blue. Those standing close to him will see that his pupils are actually in the shape of a waxing crescent moon, resembling the largest current moon's phase. Rowan is staring intently, stern-faced back at Saro, with his hand resting on the hilt at his side. But the hilt doesn't lead to a sword, the hilt leads to a chain holding a black lantern. From inside the lantern, you see a wispy pale light, but you cannot tell the source of what the light is coming from.
And as you stand there, Rowan, near the square where there seems to be this almost like hovering above the ground fountain of water, that it just seems like a glass bowl in a way, and just water sort of running down and just constantly flowing, where 5, not too long ago, reached over and tried to plant a seed at the very foot of the ground by picking up some of this water. You watch as Saro looks to you, and he walks forward, a matching 6-foot, very muscular, bare-chested tiefling, gorgeous dark orange horns that come up to a point, and this mess of black hair in the curls that's tied up in a bun that sticks off to the side. He takes out his spear, and you can hear the faint crackle of energy from the spear. And he looks at you and he says,
It's in your best interest to return to me, my father, when this is all over.
He will take a step forward. I'm not making any promises to you. He must come with me. If he returns, that's up to him.
He kind of snarls at you out of pure anger. And then Zue, you hear, even now as Kaimosora seems to be a good 30, 40, he's still going. You hear, almost in a whisper,
Ay, Saro, what will I ever do with you?
Rid, your eyes are met by the similar, sort of a little bit taller purple tiefling with blue braided hair and these black smaller horns that come up. What does this tiefling see?
Rid is not dissimilar in color to the tieflings around her. She has purple skin and kind of a medium shade, long, ratty, matted black hair that falls to around her lower back when it's down. Currently, she's tied it up in as high of a ponytail as she can, trying to keep it off of her neck in the heat. She's about 5'10", a bit too thin for her height, kind of lanky. Around her head, sort of Grecian Roman laurel style, comes a black crown of sorts. It looks kind of thorny, made out of obsidian material, resting right above her ears, which end in forked points. She's dressed in dark-colored leather armor that looks like it was a recent purchase. She's been examining her nails, which are long and gnarled and black in the way that, not painted, but black like when something's wrong with your toenail. Her teeth are pointed. The only fully human-looking thing in her face is her blue eyes, which are always moving, even if her body language says otherwise.
As you're staring at who you know to be Maiso, a sister of this individual known as Saro, she looks to you, and there is a deep anger to her look directly at you. And then she whispers to Saro, but enough for you to be able to faintly make it out, as he is a bit of a distance from her. And they call us devils. She spits on the ground. She heads back inside of this very central-looking hut that is made up of all kinds of different woods and materials that seemingly these tieflings have built themselves. As one by one, the other two children, a younger-looking brown tiefling and then a reddish-looking one with a very long tail, predominantly look back at Kaimosora and then head inside. But the only one that remains is Saro, looking to you, Rowan, who after a beat waits and looks at Five. Five, what does Saro see?
Saro sees a very tall humanoid standing at about 6'9". Body is covered from head to foot in a pearl white, shiny metal skin, which shows cracks that have been repaired with gold joiner. My inwardmost being is composed of what can best be described as a living tree or plant. My eyes, round orbs of deep dark purple and almost white-blue irises. My hair is that of a thick head of green and gold vines. Sprouting from my shoulders and waist and right leg are small pink and blue flowers. On my left side sprouts the beginning of a sturdy tree branch with green and brown leaves. Depending on the time of year and season and environment, so we're talking a very dry environment right now, my organic body shifts in color from dark brown to bright green to a bronze orange color. It is currently a very dry, dark brown, given the desert that we're currently in. As a product of these constant changes in my skin, I excrete a purple and pink pollen. I'm not excreting anything right now. I am a child of metal and a tree. I am of the forged.
As Saro looks to you with piercing gaze, the staff that he is holding crackles out. And he looks to you, Rowan, and goes, I guess there are some wonders left in this world, eh? And he gives you a very sort of cocky tap on your armor. And he looks to you, Five, and Saro says, hopefully y'all don't kill each other. Never seen your kind around. Now leave! As soon as you hear Saro say that, the rest of the tieflings pierce eyes at you and are giving you a bit of a general sort of uncomfortable feeling of pressure.
Five, actually, because he doesn't really sense awkwardness, he immediately goes back to the little mound of dirt that he had placed the seed inside, and he then casts Shape Water and extracts some of the water from the fountain that forms a sort of an oasis in this desert. And he begins to just very gently pour the water into this little ring around where he has planted the seed. And he just speaks to the plant and says, one day, you will be a great tree, and you will provide shade to everyone that comes near you. And he just says a quiet prayer to Segojan, and then he stands up to his full height, and he joins the rest of the group.
Rowan, there was a beat in there where Sato, his eyes grew furious at the fact that Five is just carefully taking this time to do that.
Hey, you look at me, not him.
And in that moment, he grunts and turns around and heads back inside of the hut.
Rid holds up a very casual, 2-finger wave. I don't know if this is how captures usually work, but the prisoner is ahead of us.
As all of you look, and Kaimosora, sure enough, is just still floating by, making his way slowly. After a short time, passing through hours now, leading into nighttime, you get to the edge of the city, where there you see a familiar cart that was given to you by Illionas Thirrel himself, that is comprised of this red steel structure with these beautiful windows on either side, a set of mechanical stairs that come down the minute you present yourself closer. Kaimosora waits, as he knows this is probably yours, and he seems to be examining it. As you continue to look and you see it sitting in the driver's seat, looks like it's an individual with very simple attire, what looks like a commoner's hat of sorts, and these piercing light for eyes, as you know him to be a projection that Kaimosora has given. At the front of the cart, there aren't horses, but these beautiful white unicorns. And it is such a sight to see amongst all of this desert. And below the cart, there are no wheels. There are no, looks like legs to these unicorns. It's almost like a cloud of smoke. Very reminiscent of the veil itself, the mist within the veil. And it's just sort of hovering in place. And as you get closer, Kaimosora looks to the driver and looks to Yuzo and goes,
You ever seen anything like this before?
I give him a gentle and coy smile and flick my wrist forward, and as it flicks, I cast Mage Hand, and you see a projection of an identical hand to mine, but with pointed blue nails. Go forward and grab open the carriage door and open it for him.
It is simple, but it'll do. Thank you.
As he takes out his hands, he finally drops to the ground. You see as he kind of shudders a bit at the heat from the sand.
It's been a minute.
And he walks up the stairs of the cart.
Rowan will stay back and ensure that everyone else gets in the cart first, and then once everyone is safely inside, he will go in and close the door once everyone's in.
I hold back for a minute and wait for Five to get to the carriage entrance. Do you think you'll need help again with the ride, Five?
That's very, very astute of you, Zue. During this exchange, you can see beads of dew on the tree portions of Five's body, almost like he's sweating. Very noticeably, his eyes have dilated, and it's like he is very uncomfortable. Just even the thought of getting back into this carriage after he had just felt very comfortable on the ground once again, even though it was a desert. I'm going to try and muscle through this. Should I need assistance, I will definitely come to you, though.
Well, you know where to find me. I give a little nod, and I step gracefully into the carriage and sit down beside Rid.
Rid has already entered the carriage and took a seat across from wherever Kaimosora is, leaning back with one leg crossed over the other, seeming to play with the edge of her clothing or something like that. Her eyes keep flicking up to Kaimosora.
Rid, when you walk into the carriage where there were just these two leather red seats, in the center, one singular one forms. As you're walking up the stairs into the carriage, Kaimosora is just sitting in the center, and he's kind of getting adjusted, fairly holding his arms and kind of looking around. He's like,
Interesting decorations. It's a very prominent color.
As it is all just this vibrant, deep red within, with adorned little jet black curtains with this gold trimming on them, golden tassels. It is just such an extravagant cart. And you sit there and you just see him, his hands, they won't stop holding each other. They're just sort of rubbing, seemingly out of comfort.
Rowan will pat Five on the back as he goes up the stairs. I guess you're stuck next to me again, friend.
I'll be okay. What's the worst that could happen? And then suddenly Five's eyes just go even wider as he suddenly contemplates the absolute worst that could actually happen.
It's best not to think about it.
Okay.
Just enjoy the sky.
As you all get in the cart, you hear the driver go, "All set then? Off we go." And you hear the same cracking whoosh of the reins as the cart, and to you, Five, your surprise, instead of going forward, begins to elevate itself upwards. And you feel that pressure of rising higher and higher. And you still feel the heat from within the cart as you continue to rise. And Kaimosora then,
I will say, I did not expect that. Not at all. But it's welcomed for sure. Lead a man to his grave in style, am I right?
Rid looks at Zue. Are we confirmed that it's a grave? Because I thought we were just bringing him there.
I don't actually know why he's assuming that there's a grave right off the bat. There doesn't have to be a grave. Not if he's willing to cooperate.
are you trying to be quiet? Are you trying to do this stealthily, or are you trying to do this just kind of like in passing?
Rid doesn't care about people overhearing creepy things that she says, so I will say probably not stealthily on Rid's part.
Zue very much made sure that Kaimosora was paying attention during the cooperation part.
And as you finish that sentence, Kaimosora looks to you.
We all can dream, right? Where is it exactly that we are going, or where you are taking me?
And at that moment, as he's standing there and he's still rubbing his hands, you guys hear almost like a clicking noise. As from the stool that he seems to be sitting in, that's also adorned in this rich red leather, the legs form these like black chains that begin to wrap around his legs, and they wrap around his hands like manacles.
Where is it again that we are going? If you are taking me somewhere, I would like to know the charges, perhaps the person that I will be speaking to. Where are we going?
Yes, I would appreciate some clarification there, Zue, as Five is noticing the manacles and the chains suddenly form around Kaimosora.
Are the chains really necessary? He came willing. I don't think it's anything that we need to worry about.
From my understanding, we are to be headed back to Illionas' home, Yggdrasil.
At the mention of Yggdrasil, you watch as Kaimosora looks at you and he goes,
That's an interesting name for a home.
and looks to you, Five, at the mention of the manacles. As you're saying that, Zue, you hear the familiar sound of Illionas' voice.
Zue, I hope you can hear this message. If you can, wonderful. Please reply with your current status.
Target has been acquired. We're en route back. Acquisition of target is easier than initially anticipated.
Wonderful. I made sure to attach some protection to the cart in case, well, who knows what he'll do. Be safe.
Do you mistrust me that much?
You, Zue? Never. My most trusted.
And there is a genuine joy to when he says that.
And, unaware, I let out a soft giggle.
Rid looks over and says, What's funny?
Oh, I'm just thinking that maybe Illionas overdid it a little bit. I mean, look at our prisoner. The manacles are really unnecessary.
It's true.
As you guys coast now above Fendraeya, you begin to get closer to an area that most of you have heard of, the Ironwood Grove. A collection of forest, collection of trees that is, well, I'll say, who's proficient in history?
I think I actually might be. Let me double check, but I think I am.
I am not.
I am.
I am.
I hope our historian is proficient in history.
Five and Rowan, you've heard of the Ironwood Grove. You've never traveled there. I'll say even you, Rowan, to an extent, not being proficient, you still have an understanding of the Ironwood Grove, but it's just more of like in passing knowledge. Rid and Zue, you both would definitely know that the Ironwood Grove gets its name as the trees itself have never been tampered with. They've never been touched. They grow naturally. They blossom. Some have outlived days, years, centuries. It's this mythical place where the ground itself is untouched, unbothered by many. Any who travel within have to travel by foot. They can't bring in outside additions. You know, it's like, it's a whole thing. People go in and they talk about how they reinvented themselves as people after spending just a day in the Ironwood Grove. You know, it's this very ethereal place that is very unexplored. And as you're sort of coasting above it, the window before you, which is part of the door, Kaimosora says,
We're not, traveling through the grove, are we?
Technically above it.
Why are you scared of trees?
No, I would just like to see it one last time.
and at that moment, the entire cart turns as all of you are pushed on top of each other, and the cart pushes up as Kaimosora's chains, they shatter like glass, and the door opens.
I cast Hold Person.
Ooh.
Interesting. Was there a save or anything on that?
Wisdom saving throw. The save is a 15.
That is a 17. As you, in that moment, watch Kaimosora almost like lean into it like a slide, and the chains shatter. You extend out your will to try to hold him. But just before the spell is complete, you watch as his legs open and he stands on the frame of the door. And he looks down with his hands behind his back. And now you see from the door, as you're all sort of piled on top of each other, crushing each other, there is just this beautiful, lush forest of compacted trees. And Kaimosora looks down. He breathes in a big breath.
So wonderful. That's somewhere I would never, ever like to visit again, even in my dreams.
And the cart now shoots back. Kaimosora rides the motion of the cart and sits again and looks to you all as you're all sort of like now piled on top of each other.
Five, can you move your elbow, please? It's right in my ribs.
Oh, so sorry. Yes,
Thank you.
he moves himself, but then he pushes Rid and Zue to the other side where they were sitting.
I told you the fucking chains were necessary.
Rid is already, I'm just thinking how dexterous she is, has already righted herself and is kind of patting Zue's shoulders, kind of and awkwardly are you hurt? Are you okay?
Oh, fascinating. I use the joint between my wrist and my palm to push up my glasses as I hurriedly flip through my book to the page of Kaimosora and start taking notes furiously about what just happened.
As the door remains open to the cart, he has completely tuned all of you out. Takes out his hand and he begins to stroke his beard. And as he does, you watch as he begins to tie little knots on the hair, which you see that's where all the other different knots sort of have come from.
There's so much beauty in the world. There really is. I mean, look at that. Untouched possibility.
But you said you would never go back.
I have no intention of ever going back, but I can appreciate beauty, even though it scares me.
What could possibly scare you about such a beautiful location?
He turns to you slightly, Five.
I'd rather not say. For my safety at the end of the day.
Five, in as subtly a way possible as a 6'9", 250-pound warforged can possibly manage, tries to very subtly whisper to Rowan. Rowan, so I know I've talked to you about the sickle that I carry.
Of course.
It is possible we could avoid this entire cart nonsense if we just went down to the forest floor and I got around some large trees for a few minutes. We could skip this whole hour of, being inside a roller coaster.
Well, Five, if you remember, it's going to be a little more than an hour, so I guess that's not a bad idea. I don't know how okay Everyone is about going into the grove, though. Apparently that's untouched ground, and I don't want to mess with anything. Especially if Kaimosora says there's dangers below.
Well, hello, everyone. Rowan and I were just talking, and we were wondering...
I played no part in this.
How about we, take the prisoner down into the wood, and I promise you, if we get within close proximity to several of the large trees, I might be able to make this whole trip nonsense a lot easier.
Rid looks at Kaimosora, who was very frail in the desert and did some kind of scary magic while over the trees, and looks at Five and is like, is he a tree person? Does he have tree powers? I don't know if that's a thing. I didn't expect that.
So I'll say more for Rowan and Rid. Even Rid, as you ask that question, you begin to study Kaimosora, who is now leg crossed over the other in the regal green robes, still just playing with his beard, but now is not looking ahead as the door eventually closed, but is now just kind of like tuning out everything. And I'll say that both of you sitting across from each other, Rowan and Rid, you all sort of like realize that you're kind of doing the same thing. You don't gather that he is of any form of what you would maybe know tree qualities. Seems like a tiefling. You've seen a couple throughout your time in Fendraeya, not as many as you saw just now in Los Diablos. It is surprising the amount of dexterity that he presented in this moment, but maybe perhaps you both gathered that there is an element to all of us which requires us to push the most that we can in any situation.
Rid looks directly across at Rowan. I was concerned that maybe taking him down there would be bad, but he seems to be here entirely willingly. If he was going to do something, I think he would have done it.
Whatever he is capable of is much more than just tree power. I don't know if his environment even matters at the display that we just witnessed. No matter where we are, he's going to do what he wants. He's shown that already. If he wanted to leave, he clearly could have. He could have crashed this whole cart down into the grove. I don't know if staying up here or going down there is the better option.
5, question. You said that you could handle it down there. Is that your powers? Is that part of what you can do?
If we go down there, you'll find out very quickly. I could talk for hours about the lore surrounding this particular skill that I have, but I think it would probably be best served if we just got down to this forest floor and we got to Idrisil.
He really can talk forever. You two will get along just fine.
You see Zue sit down, my legs crossed, flipping furiously through the book back to the sketch of 5, my eyes darting back and forth in thought, weighing the pros and cons of staying in this carriage or not. I vote we do it.
1 for down. What about you, Rowan?
I guess if it gets us home quicker, I don't see a problem.
As 5 is sort of like getting the tally of the different votes, his voice becomes more excitable at the prospect of potentially finally getting to the ground.
Rid, what about you? What say you?
I can't say no to that face.
I'll take that as a yes. Okay.
5, this isn't just some trick for you to get us to the ground, is it?
Driver!
And he bangs at on the top of the cart.
Are we looking to make any requests for stops? Do we need to maybe slow down our speed? Whatever the request may be, please share it. We are traveling at an incredible speed and will arrive shortly at the manor.
Absolutely. Get us to the ground as quick as you can manage.
Unfortunately, I cannot abide by that request. Mistress Zue, will you approve of this new decision?
Wildly excited. Yes, absolutely. Yes, I do.
Fantastic. I will go ahead and notify Master Illionas, and we begin our descent down.
You now begin to descend at an incredible speed, and you feel the momentum. You feel yourself slowly rising out of your chair as the cart itself faster and faster and faster, as all of a sudden, and you feel the wind almost kick up from underneath the cart.
Ugh. Was that better, 5? You couldn't just ride it out in the sky?
Excuse me. Five opens the carriage door and just sort of dashes onto the ground and just puts all of his limbs onto the ground and just sort of, it's not really kissing the ground, but he's just like thanking the god just for being once again on the firm earth.
I'll say as you come out, Five, and you're doing that, you look up and maybe a good 50 or 60 feet away from you is the outer layer of the Ironwood Grove. And it's incredibly hard to look within, as all of the tree trunks are almost like clustered together. There maybe looks like there's a path that has been formed throughout time, perhaps, but it is just there, almost like the leaves itself are so green and vibrant. It's iridescent against the light. And the driver is looking to you as Kaimosora looks to the rest of you.
Have we arrived?
Not quite yet. Give me one moment. Five is going to walk very swiftly over to the nearest large tree. Can I do a perception check to see what tree has the most story?
With that specificness, I'll say give me an investigation check.
I rolled a 10.
As you're looking at the trees, they are just these beautiful, sturdy trunks. The roots are embedded deep within the soil. It's actually very hard to discern which one looks the most riddled with history, if you will. You find the closest one to you, pretty wide trunk with these beautiful branches that cast a gorgeous shadow, like an embrace to you as you get closer.
How tall?
15, 20 feet tall.
This will suffice. Zue, you see Five remove the sickle from the belt that he has around his waist. This sickle, it's a wide blade, is large for a shorter, smaller person. It looks perfectly balanced in Five's grasp, and it has a purple hilt with a golden pommel on the end of it. You see Five take some purple and blue flowers and crush them in his hands, and then gently touch the golden pommel. And the sickle suddenly almost carries a faint blue glow.
As you're holding the sickle, you hear a breath. And all of a sudden you hear,
Gentle, my child. Careful.
but it's like these whispered voices ringing out to you from all over.
Given the fact that I am a druid and I have speech of the woods, I understand that these voices are coming from the trees around me.
Correct.
I gently, very lovingly just place my hand on the tree that I've chosen. Do not worry. You will not come to any harm. I take the pommel and I place it on the bark of this tall tree. And for those who noticed it back when we were in Idrisil, I had placed the pommel of my sickle against a tree that was outside of the home of Illionas. There is a glowing golden rune that suddenly appears on the surface of the bark of this tree. 5 looks back at the party. I think we should be okay to proceed. With saying that and looking back, I take my hand and I pass it through the tree. Almost as if the tree has become immaterial.
There is a light that begins to emit from the trunk itself, almost like a light from behind the tree, as the trunk itself shimmers before you, 5, but not to everyone else. Just as you place your hand inside, through this veil, if you will, you find the same cooling nature of the Veil of the Mist. But you hear once again,
these ways, child, are unnatural. Tread lightly with these forms. You are but gentle and kind, But abusing of these gifts would lead you down a path with no soil.
As your entire body goes through the tree, you guys watch as 5 begins to cross through. Kaimosora is standing outside of the cart, just looking at all of you.
That is wonderful.
And he begins to walk. You see before you on the ground the lush green grass. Every footstep he takes, the grass just withers and it becomes like a gray spot where his foot was. And it's just this dying, decaying circle, if you will. As he steps, he sees you notice. And he looks down and he goes,
Oh, my apologies.
and he rises above the ground again.
So, another form of misdirection. I like this. I appreciate this. Always keep me guessing where I'm going. I enjoy this very much. I do. You know,
And he gets really close.
I could just go. I could leave. Yet I choose not to. Do you know why? Because it's more interesting that way. I will tell you this. For a group that is supposed to be taking me somewhere for whatever the situation is, doing a pit stop, it's not the most common of practices.
I've never seen him do that before. I didn't know this is what he was going for.
I'm really only just an observer here.
And he looks to you, Zoe, and with just a gentle, frail hand, he says,
An observer with strings attached.
and he points to the sigil of the Arcanum.
I pause before sending him a telepathic message. Only with this life and this personality, maybe.
Kaimosora gives a wide grin, and he whispers in your mind,
Well, then let's get this over with.
and passes through the tree.
You see Sue lower her face a bit as I smile coyly to myself, and I walk with a skip in my step towards this portal.
Rid stands there uncertainly, looks at Rowan, looks at the driver, looks at the giant cart. So do we just leave this, or?
That's exactly what I was wondering, but she already went through the fucking portal, so I don't know how this thing is going to get back. Is it just like autopilot? Is it just going to go? Is it stranded here?
The driver's holding the reins, looking at both of you intently with those beaming lights where you can see no pupils, and is just looking to you with like a half smile.
You won't take direction from me. I don't know what you want. Go home!
Yeah, go home.
Did Zue say I could?
Yeah, Zue said go home.
Fantastic. And the cart, instead of taking upward, just vanishes.
Well then,
After you.
let's do this.
As Rid, you watch this tree before you, and you hear in your head, Rid,
I do not like this form of magic. Between you and me, if we're being honest right now, this is lazy. I don't like it. I don't appreciate it. You walk through that portal, and I won't talk to you for a couple of days. I promise you.
How is it lazy? He opened a door in a tree. What would you rather he do? Rip his eye out?
No, maybe, I don't know. Some, like, a good brisk walk or something. I don't know. Fine, do it. I will stay here. I didn't mean what I said about me leaving you. I am gonna stay here. But I am gonna be very hesitant the next time I talk to you.
I didn't think you meant it. It has been a little bit difficult to get you to shut up since this began.
you just hear like a heavy breath in.
Now that is the Rid that I know.
And the voice vanishes.
Rid kind of smiles and rolls her eyes to herself and then walks through the portal.
If you'll allow me, can I give a description of what the people experience?
Ooh.
Sure, of course.
There's this cooling sensation that takes you as you are transported. It's like you're transported through a network that transcends time as Plants have spread their massive roots through the centuries. You suddenly see flickers of images and memories of the different trees and plants that exist throughout the known world. Some trees overlooking the sea, some palm trees in the middle of a desert, some that are off the side of a mountain. You arrive right outside the exterior of Yggdrasil.
You guys emerge now on the other side, back in the familiar center courtyard of these red trees that make up the exterior surrounding Yggdrasil, Illionas' manor. This beautiful mansion of sorts that is all jet black with beautiful tones of wood. It is a sight to hold with thousands of windows, it seems, all interconnecting from room to room, a beautiful door at the center with a grand staircase that leads up to the main door. There at the center of the manor, you see a tower that rises at the very center of it, very high up. And at the very tip of the tower, it's sort of off-center. It's like the entire foundation goes up, tilts, and then comes back to a smaller window with a very fine point that is the ceiling. As you arrive and you feel the mist again, you don't even know what time it is, as remember, within the veil of the mist, there is this uncertainty of hours and days. There is a perpetual mist that forms not only on the ground, but above the city. And through all the lanterns and fireplaces and all kinds of natural form light that are emitted through the streets alone, they cast a light onto the mist and in so give you a sensation of a perfect haven. And there, as you are coming out, Zue, make a perception check for me.
14.
You see to your left, a little bit away from the center of the courtyard, leaning up against the building, what looks like 2 dwarves, a tiefling, a gnome, and a harengon. All just piled up together. They seem to be like wrapping bags, and immediately it hits you. You've seen these people before. You see the dwarves with these beautiful adorned armor, the tiefling in this vibrant reddish hue skin, the gnome with this silver white hair, and then this tall harengon with one ear that droops down. You watch as the harengon looks to you. Hi. And the tiefling, she smacks her hand. What are you doing? But then the tiefling turns around and goes, oh, hi. You're very cute.
Thank you. You too. And I turn back quickly to my book, but still giving them little side glances every moment or so.
In that minute, there is a feeling that comes over you. That feeling when you willingly leave a friendship. That feeling when you part ways with people. It hits you as you turn around.
I put my hand out to say something, but pull it back, thinking better of it. Immediately go back to looking at my book, pushing my glasses further up on my face towards my eyes to hide them.
Who has the highest passive perception?
Oh, I have 16.
I have a 17.
I'll say 5 and Rowan. You notice this from Zue. She is doing her best to keep it to herself, but you can't help but notice, especially when the hand comes up to the glasses.
Do you know these people, Zue?
I think I've seen them before. I think they just remind me of someone I know.
Good memories, I hope?
I would say mixed feelings.
At that moment, as you're all walking and you're having this conversation, you find yourself at the foot of the stairs that lead into the main door of Yggdrasil, and the doors open that reveal the inside of the manor. And there, waiting for you at the entrance with open arms, this human, semi-pale skin with this mess of silver whitish hair that comes down past his ears, seems a little bit more relaxed, and it splits naturally off-center to the right. But he's still adorned in these beautiful black leather long shirt with like a long jacket, these rich black leather pants, beautiful boots with all kinds of cufflinks in the gold pattern, certain red, and there, of course, a half cape that comes above both of his shoulders to the sigil of the Arcanum, this very vibrant sigil. You scared me, Zue. You were supposed to take the cart. Why do I take the time? Why do I make the effort to give you the best and most comfortable form of transportation for you to all of a sudden abandon it?
Illionas, hear me out. We traveled through a tree. A tree, Illionas. Yeah, 5 did it.
And he runs down the stairs to look at your book. You don't say. By tree.
Yeah.
5, and just turns around to you, 5, and is looking to you and goes, I will express again. Should you choose to live here in Yggdrasil, I will make you a room where you can live out the rest of your days and we can talk about everything that makes you you. I may be a little forward, but you are delightful. Love it. Claps his hands and begins to walk, and he goes, come with me. And all of a sudden, as he's walking up the stairs, he stops. He all of a sudden realizes the setting, as from behind you, standing off, is Kaimosora, who didn't really get a lot of this interaction. But you watch as Illionas stops at the stairs and turns around and looks to you, Zue. Good job. Now bring him inside.
I send a telepathic message to Kaimosora. If you're willing, we are ready to talk now.
5, with your high passive perception, you notice around you the central square is made up of these interconnecting streets that lead from the entirety of the Veil of the Mist into the center of the city is Yggdrasil, is the manor. The trees that are in between each one of these pathways, they are, of course, underneath, adorned with natural forming green lush grass that leads into the trunk up to the tree with the red leaves. And you notice Kaimosora release his foot from the grass, and it doesn't turn gray. It stays perfectly green and lush and beautiful. And he begins to hover now towards Zue. Lands next to you, Zue. You can't help but notice, Zue, there is a trembling to his voice.
Do I go first? What is protocol here?
I notice his trembling. Walk up beside him, I straighten my shirt, and I hold out an arm for him to grab if he is willing to take it.
Make a persuasion check.
15?
He looks at your arm, and it's almost like he is bewildered that you did this. Very timidly, he lets go of his arms that he keeps on routinely rubbing back and forth as he's trying his best to disguise within the sleeves of the robe. His arm reaches through yours.
It's not many days that you find such courteous practices when dealing with a criminal.
As a true historian, I try to take everything with a grain of salt.
I wish others would feel the same way.
And he now begins to walk, and now there is a frailness to this old tiefling that is beginning to walk up the stairs with you. You all notice this, and Rowan, also with your high passive perception, you notice on the branches of one of the trees a white owl with this beautiful bluish faint halo around it look to you with these full moon eyes reflecting of the moon of Fendraeya itself. And you hear in your head,
tread lightly, my child.
Rowan nods, puts his hand on the hilt of his chain, and follows the two of them up the stairs, but at a distance.
As you all eventually head inside of the manor, you are greeted, of course, with the same white stone, beautifully polished marble flooring, met with the walls that reach such heights of this deep, same red, vibrant color. Beautiful doors and portraits of all of these people, which you assume to be friends of Illionas, colleagues, pictures of Illionas himself in different stages of his life. One with what looks like could be his mother, and they are all in a, not a moving, active fashion, but there is a slight breath to them. They almost feel alive, as the one with the mother looks to you, Rowan, as you guys emerge. There is a anger to her look that meets Kaimosora. And you take note of it because she looks to you first and then looks over to Kaimosora. And it is just a picture of a mother holding a baby, which you would sort of assume to be Illionas, that is looking hatefully, following the steps of Kaimosora. And you all watch now as you all come in and the doors close behind you. Every picture is fixed on Kaimosora. Cannot pull away. Even the animals in the backgrounds of images look to Kaimosora. As Kaimosora steps inside barefoot and you hear the padding of his feet.
I will nudge Rid with an elbow. Do you see the paintings?
I don't like this.
Well, at least they're not looking at us like that. We need to be careful.
I wonder if it's personal.
I feel like there's some sort of conflict between the two.
You watch as Kaimosora is standing at the center of this lobby, if you will, greeted with a familiar, even grander staircase that leads into a second floor. And there at the end of the staircase, on top of these very decorative marble eyeballs that resemble that of the Arcanum's design, is Illionas, who is just mindlessly touching the decorative piece at the top of the staircase and is looking at Kaimosora in a very sort of like inquisitive look. Kaimosora is still looking around the room and then eventually meets down and looks at Illionas.
So you must be who is looking for me. Is that fair?
And you watch at that point, Illionas lets go of the decorative piece and he just fidgets with his fingers and he's like, yes, us, the Arcanum, we're looking for you. Kaimosora Navinay. Zue, you know this is Illionas trying his best to be brave. You are not a guest. You are to be questioned, per your crimes, by the Arcanum. Bring him up. You now, at that point, when he acknowledges all of you, now notice that he's trying too hard to put on a brave face. And Illionas turns around and opens the two doors that lead into what you guys know to be this library where you were given this task. Kaimosora is still just standing there, nervously still doing this with his hands, but a faint smile goes over his face. And he laughs a little bit. Off we go. And he begins to walk up the stairs.
Can I do an Arcana check on the hand gestures and movements to see if I can recognize anything magical or arcane about his hand motions?
Sure. Make an Arcana check for me.
It's a 15.
It's a little hard to tell. Your mind sort of goes to two places. Your mind goes to the natural way in which you've seen people, for the way that you've seen them now, that, there is behaviors that just sort of come naturally to people. And in this case, you've seen Kaimosora perform this rubbing motion with his hands over and over again. You perceive it as nerves. But with a 15, could it be possibly some somatic gestures? Maybe. But he's not giving himself enough breathing room in between putting pressure on his hands. And that's what kind of throws you off, that perhaps it's not. But the stop and the chuckle send your mind there.
5 comes alongside Rowan. Rowan, I know you've probably noticed this as well, but the hand motions of Kaimosora, there's something about them. I can't quite pin it down, but just keep an eye out. It could be that he might be trying to cast a spell. I know that he's already done something. He manipulated the carriage in some way. I don't know. It seems like he's going along with us, but he might just be toying with us at this point. Just keep an eye out. Also, when I'm not 100% sure that we're not the baddies in this situation.
Note taken, my friend. I wasn't sure if I should take it as nerves being that we're bringing him to God knows what here, but I'll be sure to keep an eye out.
I have a spell. If he does anything, I'm going to tag him with it.
Absolutely. God knows he didn't use his hands for what he did in the cart, so it could just be nerves, but it's best to be on the lookout.
What's Zue doing? Is Zue watching Kaimosora? Is Zue listening to those two?
I thought my arm was still linked with his.
Oh, I will say that he let go of it as soon as you guys got into the center of the house.
I am standing kind of uncomfortably close to him, so as to be ready if he runs away. But not like super creepy close, just uncomfortably close.
When he starts going up the stairs, picks up his robes and begins going up, you sort of like naturally head back. And I'll say at that point, if you wanted to, I'll say that you could pick up his arm again to give him support, or if you wanted to hang back, you can.
I do offer my arm back up again.
He takes it, and you still feel the trembling on his arm as he links with you. But he doesn't look to you now. There's no sweetness, no tenderness to you offering help. There is just a man that seems to be walking forward, and he is looking ahead.
Please remind me if Kaimosora is wearing something with pockets.
From what you've seen, yeah. You guys spent a good while with him. You notice that there are just 2 long pockets on the exterior, and you would gather, because you've seen robes like this, there is probably a whole abundance of pockets inside of Kaimosora's robes.
Off to the side, where she's standing kind of near the wall, while everyone else is sort of either walking down the hall arm in arm or talking to each other, Rid reaches into the back of her mouth and plucks out one of her back molars. And then she casts an invisible mage hand, grabs the molar with it, and tries to slip it into Kaimosora's pocket.
Oh, fuck. Damn.
You glide what you can see as this mage hand floating through the space, and you hear in your mind,
Oh, yes, yes. But the molar, I would have gone with a canine or something else.
Too noticeable, says Rid under her breath.
and eventually on one of the pockets, as his leg comes up to find the next step, naturally the pocket just slightly opens and you find enough space to drop your tooth in there.
5 notices this.
You sort of notice more that Rid steps away and shoves her hand in her mouth, and you hear the like snap of something just breaking.
Does Rid notice 5 notice?
What's your passive perception?
13.
Yeah, you guys are in a quiet room together. You would notice as all of a sudden just 5 in general just turn to you. He turns to you as the tooth is already out and you've already put in the mage hand. So I guess he sees you putting the tooth in the mage hand.
As the mage hand kind of goes off, Rid just makes eye contact with 5 and raises a finger to her lips.
Basically, he blinks his eyes, and it's like he's recording this moment, like he's logging it for future reference. He doesn't really get everything about fleshies, so he's always wanting to make sure that he remembers.
As you all watch Zue and Kaimosora eventually get up to the top of the staircase, into the open doors that lead into Illionas' study room, library of sorts. There used to be these shelves that went from the floor high up, books all over. There's that central table that was made up like a massive eye of the Arcanum. There's those beautiful brown leather chairs with the red seats. There was all of these great detail. But as you get up there, you see the table, you see the chairs, and you see the bookshelves, but no books. There is still the one map of Fendraeya to your left, and that beautifully adorned massive size that has the interconnecting little maps and tallies and sort of connecting dots. And then to the right, you also see the extravagant self-portrait of Illionas that is at the front of his manor, looking to you all. But instead of smiling, there is a pan-dead look to his face. There you see at the head of the table, standing with one finger tapping the table nervously, is Illionas.
5 recognizes immediately that there are no books, because there were books before, and there are no books now, which is odd.
For you, Zue, as you're holding on to Kaimosora, Kaimosora lets go.
I think I can take it from here. Thank you.
And you watch as every time Kaimosora wanted to lift, he would just kind of graciously twirl his hand up and his body would rise. But now as he twirls it, you watch as his body motion upward, but his feet never leave the ground. He looks back to you but doesn't acknowledge you and begins to walk, and you hear the pattering, the shy footsteps as he stands there looking at Illionas. Illionas says, well, perfect. You've arrived. We have you now. How do you...
I hate this.
And he begins to talk to himself.
I walk over to Illionas with a confident stride, and I put my hand reassuringly on his shoulder. I cast calm emotions as a wave of warmth starts to surge from my hand into his body.
You watch not so much that he wants to resist it, but more as when you're so upset about something that you don't allow yourself to think. And the last thing you are thinking about is calming your emotions. You want to get this nervousness, this anger, whatever it may be that you're feeling in the moment, as all people do. Eventually, the warm sensation leaves you and you know that you've calmed him.
Thank you, Zoe.
I send Illionas a telepathic message. You've got this. You've done a million of these before. This is just another investigation. You can do it.
And he says to you again, with these wide eyes,
but this one's different. Everyone's watching me.
They're always watching, aren't they?
A little more carefully now.
And he waves his hand, the chairs come out. And there at where Kaimosora stands, a small tree stump projects itself out of nowhere. Illionas walks up and goes, sit. Kaimosora looks to him, looks to you all, picks up his robes, and sits down. As soon as he does, what looked like a tree stump bursts out in these like jet black arms, and they all just wrap around Kaimosora from the feet to the chest, the arms, all over, and they just restrain him. Illionas lets out a sigh of relief. There is some time to kill before they arrive. We can at least get started. Kaimosora!
And who do I have the pleasure of speaking with?
Archmage Illionas Thirrel of the Arcanum. Pleasure. What would you call what you did in Arborea? Kaimosora stops and he goes,
Oh, you're after my mistakes.
Well, not your mistakes, your abundant abuse of divination for the sake of clarity beyond the sight that looks to keep all other realms at bay. You know what you did. You watch as Kaimosora looks a little surprised and he goes,
Well, you have enough evidence, I'm assuming, to present your case before whoever may be and rid me of this place.
For the first time, Zue, you notice it. Like a laugh that weirdly comes out of Illionas. We do not mean to remove you from any place. We only wish to restrain you and to keep you from performing all of the tragedies that you did back at home. Were you not the one who brought about the Grey Wastes to Arborea? And you watch as Kaimosora, he now leans back.
That is not at all what the case was, but yes, sure, whatever you believe.
I don't have to believe it. I don't. You see, where you sit, and you now notice the tree trunk itself, that used to be this like brown, lush trunk of cut tree, is graying and withering away. I know it. You carry it with you, like guilt. And he steps a little closer to Kaimosora. He now begins to walk behind him. Kaimosora looks back to him and he goes,
Whatever you heard of what happened in Arborea, that is between me and my Concord. That's right, your Concord. And now exactly where would this Concord be located? You wouldn't have happened to have brought them with you, now did you? We are looking to not only acquire a player in this game, but we want the whole team. You watch as Kaimosora goes, okay. So you want me to betray my people? I want you to bring about justice to the people of Fendraeya, who you stumbled upon, and now have the possibility of laying the same waste and destruction upon this realm? Well, let me tell you something. Navinay, I will not allow you to do that. Anywhere. Ever. Again. You watch as Kaimosora looks, and he says, have we met before? Illionas now finds himself just but inches away from Kaimosora's face. And Illionas comes back and he brushes his jacket and his cape and he adjusts the sigil of the Arcanum. Play all the games you want, Kaimosora. Play away. Make them doubt me. Make them doubt everything. But you know exactly what you did. Now, reveal the location of the rest of the Concord before others arrive. At the mentioning of others in this fashion, you watch as Kaimosora get a little uncomfortable.
Who are the others? Who are we waiting for to pass judgment upon him?
Illionas looks to you and says, the High Council of the Arcanum. They are the ones who bestowed upon me this task. You are the ones that I hired. Miraculous job. They are the ones who will decide his fate. So if I tell you where you can find the rest of the Concord, then perhaps you'll, what, torture me a little faster? And Illionas goes, torture? No. And there he goes back to this same sort of boisterous way about him. And he goes, oh no, no, that's not me. That is not me. Do you believe you should be tortured, Kaimosora? Should you not be tortured for what you did? And Kaimosora looks down, and now there is a heaviness to him. I deserve the deepest of punishments. Well, that is why you are here. Alana will speak to you, and perhaps she will determine your fate. At the mention of Alana, Kaimosora, who? Alana, I believe you've met? Betrayed her trust, I think is how she puts it. Kaimosora looks to all of you with a anger in his eyes. If you were to have brought me to my death, I should have killed you when I had the chance! And you watch as Kaimosora now begins to wildly begin to move in his restraints.
I cast Hold Person on him.
I'll say succeeds because he is being restrained. As he begins to move and all of a sudden freezes up. And with an anger looks to you, Five. And looks to you, Zue. And Rid. And Rowan. One by one eyeing all of you until he finally meets up with Illionas, who is just smiling nervously. She will speak with you. And then we can proceed. As he turns around to face all of you, he says, okay, well, that was good. That was great. Okay, now, if you wish, meet me downstairs and, the Ironwood Grove, you hear Kaimosora say. And Illionas goes, what did you say? If you head into the Ironwood Grove, you will find some members of the Concord. And at that moment, in pure anger, a single tear comes out of Kaimosora's eye. And he looks at Illionas. Let me see her. And Illionas goes, oh, you will.
But with this bit of information, now, perhaps when we speak to her, it could be a little bit more favorable for you. Which is good. We want that. We need that. For your safety. And for the safety of Fendraeya. Kaimosora, still paralyzed, as he is still being restrained on top of a stump that's not being nailed down, but with no effect. Nothing happens. There is no getting out of this. Illionas goes, okay, all of you, out of the room now. Out of the room. Come on, let's go.
Rid will head out first.
Rowan stands up from his chair, walks over to Kaimosora, and places a hand on his shoulder. I didn't know we were bringing you to this. We were hired. I don't know if you believe in any gods, if you look towards any specific deities, but I will pray for you. I hope Selune can watch over you, and I hope you get the conclusion that you're looking for when you see this individual again. And for flavor, I will cast Guidance as a light pale blue glow blesses his shoulder.
You hear in your mind the voice of Kaimosora.
It's on your conscience now. My children will live out the rest of their days without a father. And all of the people in Los Diablos will die because of what you've done.
Hearing that in my head, I will say out loud, my conscience will be free, knowing that you're gone. Knowing that you won't be around to litter Fendraeya with the corpses of my citizens. Do you understand? May Selune guide you to wherever you go next. And I walk out.
Hold person requires me to be able to see my target for the spell to continue. So can 5 stay in the room?
It's up to you. This individual is here, is apprehended. Illionas had his moment. So now it's like, okay, well, that's the most that we can do. As you remember that Illionas mentioned that he was not the one that was going to be questioning Kaimosora. He was not the one that was going to be doing everything. His entire job was just simply to acquire this individual in a very low profile kind of way. Well, let's get out of here, right? Let's go talk payment. Payment, yes, all of you. You wanted books, right, 5? Yes, books. Let's here are some books. And he flicks his hand, and on one of the shelves, the books just almost like slam to the very back of it, and you see them again appear.
I also walk up to Kaimosora after. I put my book on his lap, and I look up at him. Is there a part of your history that you want to be told?
Kaimosora looks at you with these eyes, and you hear in your mind,
let the record show. Throughout the ages of Arborea and this living hell you call home, that what I did is much more complicated than what you all seem to assume. Let the record show that I can still hear their screams.
I furiously scribble down everything he's just said to me, and as I do, I look up at him, and my eyes reflect his, almost completely identical, and I send him a telepathic message. It's done, and I will do my best. And as I blink, my eyes go back to my piercing blue eyes, and I close my book, and I silently get up and leave the room.
Rid did not go far from the exit of the room, has kind of leaned back with her arms folded against the wall. After everyone else has had their conversation with Kaimosora, Rid will send her message. I watch everything. I'll watch them. And I'll watch you. And we'll see what I think.
With the spell, it is concentration.
What's the duration as well?
A minute. So we're coming up on that, I'm feeling right now.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm going to drop it. I'm going to join Illionas at the bookcase, What books do I have in front of me?
You're sort of getting from your group approval to release. This is kind of like beyond your control now. And then I'll say that at that point, you let go of the spell. At that point is when you walk over to Illionas to the bookshelf, and we'll get back there. For you, Rid, as you said that, you hear in your head,
You will watch them. You will care for them. But you will never be them. I sense a struggle within you. You're afraid. You know what's the cure for how you're feeling. Instant death.
5, you're walking towards the books as all of a sudden you just hear Kaimosora laugh. 5, as Illionas places a couple of books on your hands. More tears begin to stream down Kaimosora's face as Illionas places the last book on you, and now without realizing you're holding like 10 books. And Illionas goes, okay, best we go. Follow me. Come with me. 5, perfect. And as you guys walk out, Kaimosora begins to scream out.
You'll all die. All of you. You will all feel this hatred. This fire.
And as soon as the doors close, Illionas says to you 5, he goes, well, that surely was scary. And Illionas's body light up in a black flame with this white layer to it. And you hear Illionas, help me, help me, as he begins to burn in this vibrant flame, and you hear the laughter from inside as Kaimosora laughs.
I have met you before. We've met. In my dreams.
As Illionas is currently in flames, what are you guys doing?
I immediately pull out my water skin and I shape water and I just throw the water onto Illionas.
Okay, that's 1. What are the rest of you guys doing within quick reaction times?
Rowan tries to run up and just bangs on the door and tries to open it the best he possibly can.
All right, so you begin pounding on the door. As 5, you take out the cube of water.
I'm panicking and I grab my inkwells and I dump them on him. Not sure entirely if they're going to catch fire or not, but they are liquid.
You're desperately just trying to do something. And Rid,
I suppose I'm trying to help open the door.
so you both come up and you start slamming at the doors. Just in that moment, 5, you take out this cube of water and you send it in the direction of Illionas, as Illionas is now screaming, and it is just this howling scream. And Zue, you take out your ink bottle and you just throw it as the water splashes on top of Illionas and the flames come down, but there are some still in his like sleeves and his pants, and he begins to pat them down. He goes, please, and this shrieking, scared voice comes out as all of a sudden he pats the last bit of the flames, and as you're both slamming on the doors, Illionas goes, stop, stop. They will not open. I closed them. And he's still like fanning out some of the flames. Bless you, 5. And looks to you all as you're all standing by the door, and he goes, I closed it. He will not be able to get out of there until others arrive.
There's no other exits. He has the window. He has all sorts of means of just teleporting away. You're going to lose sight of him.
You see now Illionas in this he's covered in soot, basically, it seems. But it's not black soot or sort of like traces of fire or flame or anything. It's like white ash is what it looks like. All over his like jet black clothing.
I'm going to cast Cure Wounds at first level. He recovers 9 hit points.
As Rowan, you say that, 5, you cast Cure Wounds, and Illionas looks to you and he goes, you're forgetting something, Rowan. This is my home. Damn him. No need to fear. The only way he's getting out of here is if I'm dead, and we don't want that. I would like to be very much alive. Thank you very much. Trisha! And you watch as the visage of a red-ish tiefling come up with these beautiful silver horns. She stands next to him. She goes, you called? I would like to change my clothes. Can you please bring them? Can you prep them in my chambers? right away. And she vanishes like sand. And Illionas then kind of standing there at the top of the staircase with, a pathway that leads into other areas of the manor. He looks to you all and he goes, "That was awkward. I almost died. You all have to get paid. Follow me." And he now just still kind of like finding his footing, is struggling to come down the stairs, and his entire self is shaking. Okay. I'll just sit. I'll sit. And he just sits at the stairs. 5, if this is what you want for pavement, take them. Those are the best books in this side of Fendraeya. All about our history, our world, anything. It's all there. The rest of you, are we looking for monetary pavement? We can provide that. The Arcanum has given me enough to pull from. And now he is sitting at these stairs, and he's just not worried about anything. He's just sort of like is so afraid that he's coming down from it. But he's just trying to keep up the conversation with you all.
5 recognizes that despite the difference in their makeup, this is still a human being that has gone through significant trauma in the last 5 minutes. 5 doesn't have the ability to calm this person or give them solace, but he remembers Zue in the carriage, and he just comes over and very just gently puts his hand on her shoulder. Could you do something for him? He seems to be a mess.
You see, this whole time, Zue has actually been writing down what's happening, writing about Illionas catching on fire, puts her pen down at 5's suggestion. Illionas, sorry, did you want help with calming down?
I think this time, Zue, I think I'm okay. I'd like to, ride this out, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
I'll be all right. Thank you, though. He says to you in your head, "Did you hear what he said, though? The Ironwood Grove."
I would keep an eye on that, maybe.
Or perhaps, if I can, Zue, could you look into it for me?
Alone? Or with this group?
You're all standing there as Zue and Illionas are just basically like looking at each other and every now and then nodding their heads.
Rid looks at 5 and Rowan and is like, "This is a pretty intense staring contest."
And then at that point, when you say that is when Illionas kind of snaps out and he goes, "Oh, again, not aware of my surroundings. Well, I was just telling Zue, I am more than able to provide all of you with a payment for what you've did. But you saw," and his voice kind of hushes a bit, and he goes, "You saw that madman. You experienced that. I was not alone. But he mentioned the Ironwood Grove. The Ironwood Grove are unexplored lands. How? It would be too much to ask. But if you maybe look into the Ironwood Grove, we could continue this relationship. We could offer any other form of payments. If there are others within the grove, that scares me, to be honest with you. It does."
Friendship is the reason I came to the Vale of the Mists. Faramore is a budding coastal city. We are in search of allies. I came here seeking a partnership, if you will, with the Arcanum.
Oh.
And whether I speak with you or the High Council, now or later, that is my payment. But now I am more concerned that there are more people like him wandering about. Those who work with him, those who ally with him, those who worship him. I've seen what he can do firsthand, and if the stories you tell are true, they're not far behind in what they can do. I want them gone. And if that means winning better favor with you and the High Council, count me in.
Illionas gets up, dusts himself, and he goes, "A partnership between the Arcanum and the Thirrel. You do not need to say any more, Rowan. We will discuss this. And I thank you for your tenacity. This is about everything that we hold dear."
My family and I appreciate your consideration. We look forward to a mutual agreement.
I thank you, Rowan. Five and Red, you are not at all beholden to this. This is my call. But I believe that this is a good decision. To find the rest of this Concord. To keep Fendraeya safe.
If I may, this could be a really good opportunity to learn for you and I, Five. I turn back to everyone else. He did mention wanting to find new lands for his home, and I love history, and this is completely uncharted land, and we could learn from it.
And if you wish to be the ones who tell the tales of the Ironwood Grove, who am I to stop you? I would love nothing more than for you, and he looks to Zue, to write your book. For you five to explore the unexplored. For Rowan to hold his position and to keep the people safe. And for you, Rid, my apologies, what is it that you want?
At this question, her eyebrows knit together. Her eyes flicker briefly to Zue before returning to Illionas. I want to protect the people that I've met. I want positive change in Fendraeya. When I get back, I want information.
Information you shall have. Well, look at that. Now, this is a little group. That's great. That's fantastic. That's great. I'm genuinely excited, even though there is a mass murder behind those doors. Okay, let's go downstairs. And he begins to walk downstairs a little bit faster, but with a kick to his step. You can sleep here. Perhaps we eat? Five, do you eat?
No.
Illionas just kind of goes, Zue, write that down. As this conversation continues, you all eventually eat a very delicious, filling meal of all of your favorites that Illionas is able to sort of conjure and bring to you. You all sit around and you talk about Los Diablos, you talk about the Tieflings, you talk about his children, you talk about all of these different experiences that you've had in such a short period of time.
Can Five, during this time since he's not eating? Because at this point, there have been multiple instances where certain things that Rid has done has definitely been odd.
I don't know what you're talking about.
And he's specifically looking at Rid's fingers, because he notices that they're not like Zue's and they're not like Rowan's. In fact, they're nothing like any of the other humanoid creatures that he's encountered.
It would be a natural perception. You're looking, she is bringing her hands every now and then close to her mouth. You know, the occasional fruit that she actually plucks with her fingers or whatever sort of cutlery she's using. So yeah, perception.
26.
Jesus.
Damn.
Oh, wow.
I'll say keep it very detailed, but I'll say from your hands down to maybe whatever's exposed of the wrist.
Rid's hands are humanoid, but they are off. They are also off from what you would expect from a tiefling. So although they're purple, the nails are long and twisty and black and rotten looking. And between the purple skin and the black nails and the mottled nature of them, it reminds you of a night hag.
Five is definitely remembering stories that were being told to him by his creator, Rosie Springbraid. He remembers night hags were sort of a taboo subject. It was not something that was talked about. It was like saying Voldemort at Hogwarts. You don't do it. It's basically a situation where, again, Five blinks on Rid's hands and fingers, and he catalogs it.
Her hands are uniquely hers. I'll say that in that moment, you look at your hands. Your hands are different than one's. Your hands are different than two's. Four's hands are a little bit weird, but your hands are yours.
Five catalogs this, assesses a potential threat, and comes away just, I noticed this, and I'm not bothered by it anymore.
After the dinner is over, and I assume everyone's absconded off to their quarters or wherever they're staying, Rid sits on her bed and folds her hands and goes into a trance. And she's checking on what Kaimosora is doing.
As you go into this trance, you see everything through a tunnel. And this tunnel has what looks like hands reaching out from the corners of your eye, from your peripheral. And you hear the voice. Okay, all right. Now, we do things the interesting way. Let's check on him, shall we? And it's almost like you're passing through the tunnel, and as soon as this voice stops. So describe to me how you would like to see this.
I'm trying to think of a different way to say this, but when someone's like goes on a trip in a movie or something, and they're kind of like up at an angle, and it's kind of slightly off, the shot feels slightly off, like you're not really there, kind of crooked and wrong. That is how Rid views things when she trances.
Like a canted angle.
Right.
As you emerge, you find yourself hovering right above Kaimosora. And Kaimosora is not on the tree stump. Kaimosora is looking out the window. And you see him just standing there as your ethereal sort of like, almost like a smoke cloud, if you will, above him. Still corporeal with your own shape and form, looking at him, piercing at him. You watch as Kaimosora is just looking out the window that looks out to the rest of the Veil of the Mist. And he just kind of lets out a deep breath as he continues to look around the room. You now look at the room and the table's been like knocked over. The shelves are empty again. The map is untouched, but the frame, the massive frame of Illionas is just like ripped to shreds.
There's no chains or anything still on him. Okay. Oh, right. Rid was going to keep looking, and then the tooth was going to dissolve.
You keep looking, and just as you see that bit of connection that you have with this piece of yourself, you watch as Kaimosora walks, and he sits down on the stump, and he lets out a deep breath, and he looks right at you, makes eye contact with you, and your vision fades, just as the tooth dissolves. I'll say with that, you all get a long night's rest, so you can take a long rest.
5 does not require a room. When he finds out where everyone else is sleeping, he sort of picks a spot outside of all of the rooms where he's like equidistant to all of them, and then he powers down into sentry mode.
And the next morning, you are woken by the sound of knocks. As you are all standing there within your chambers getting ready for the day, the sunlight, that apparent sunlight that seems to come in through your windows, you know it's not possible, as it is, of course, hard for the sun to pierce the mist. Open the doors, and sure enough, through conversation, Illionas reveals that I can at least make something to make it seem like the world still thrives out there, right? A little bit of sun, a little bit of night, right? Now he's in a much more relaxed attire, just like a simple, open-chested black tunic shirt. Illionas then talks with you. He thanks you again for what you're doing. He discusses payment. He gives all of you 500 gold pieces.
5 gives his share to Rowan.
Rowan, you a rich boy. Leave the party while you can.
Hang on to it tight.
And you are eventually ushered out to this familiar carriage, as Illionas is now standing there next to you this time.
Before we get in, 5 looks at the rest of the group, and he sees the carriage, and he hangs back. And again, the moment of it, like sheer anxiety of going up and being disconnected from the ground, comes over him. He grabs Rowan's arm. Rowan, I would very much like to not travel by carriage. I can do the thing. I could do the thing again, and we could go right back to the same tree. We'd be right in front of the Iron Grove.
Step on through. Let's do it.
whatever way of transportation you wish to embark upon, it is all right with me. If Zue, you want to get on the cart, I mean, you don't have to. It's just a cart. I mean, I work really hard at it, but it's okay. It's fine. It's fine.
No, Illionas, you want to see this. This is the tree thing that I was telling you about that 5 does.
This is the tree thing. Okay, and the cart just vanishes. Now Illionas, he wipes up his hands and he goes, all right, let's see. Just now giddy with joy.
5 approaches the tree that has the same emblazoned rune. He again presses his hand to the rune. The moment he applies pressure to the bark of the tree, his hand passes right through it.
Illionas is standing like right in between the tree and your hand as you're bringing it closer, and he's just kind of like Alfred Molina in Indiana Jones, just like, oh, just like completely transfixed by what you're doing. Oh my goodness. Oh, look at this. Oh. As he clutches his face and is pulling on his cheeks. Zue, where do you find them? Where do you find them? Absolutely fantastic.
I know. I grab his hand gently but firmly and put it through the portal so he can feel it for himself.
Whoa. Wow. And his eyes narrow with a focus as there is that innate part of Illionas that is drawn to this. Truly, 5. Truly wonderful. He extends his hand out to you, almost like a handshake.
5 takes his hand, but not as a handshake. He sort of like cups the hand and just with both hands holding Illionas' hand, he just sort of brings it up and down, and then he stops. And then he gestures to the rest of the party, indicates to the rest of them to proceed through the opening.
I'll say as one by one, all of you are passing as Illionas is just kind of like, thank you so much. Just as Rowan, you're about to step, he kind of stops you. Remember, this is for Fendraeya at the end of the day. And I believe in what you're doing.
For the betterment of Fendraeya.
He lets out a deep breath, and you step through. Rowan, as you're stepping through the portal, just as the portal sort of like begins to close behind you, the shimmering essence of this vision that you can see fades. You watch as his smile drops, and he turns around and heads back home just as the portal closes. And that's a wrap for today's session. Thank you all so much for listening. Catch us in 2 weeks where we will continue this journey at the entrance of the Ironwood Grove. And who's to say what lies beyond the grove? Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. And remember, the Arcanum is always watching.